On October 5th, 1995, a brand new series aired on PBS called Wishbone. The show was a live-action children's series about a dog who imagines himself as the roles of characters in classic literature. It would have lots of success, but despite that, ended after just 2 seasons, shocking and disappointing many viewers. Wishbone was created by Rick Duffield, who came up with the idea in 1992. At the time, he was Vice President of Development at the Lions Group, a Texas-based media and publishing company. The Lions Group produced books and toys, and it also created the show Barney and Friends. Duffield did not work on Barney and worked in book publishing, but Duffield wanted to pitch an idea for a TV show, and over time developed the idea for a children's TV show starring a dog. There were several early concepts, such as a show about a tough bulldog named Knuckles who lives in New Orleans, or a dog who brought good luck to anyone who was around him, which is where the name Wishbone came from. And the name from that idea ended up sticking. In fact, that was one of the final ideas for the show. However, the rest of the idea did not work out, and instead, when Duffield was at home, he was wondering what his dog might be thinking, and that his dog had a big imagination. This grew into the winning idea for the show, and it was going to be a live-action split narrative series. It would follow a dog who has a big imagination and likes to envision himself as the lead character from classic works of literature. He would live with a family, and the show could follow their lives as well as the dog's imagination, and it could teach children about reading. When it was decided this would be the show, the Lions Group went to pitch it to PBS in late 1993. They had recently started working with PBS for Barney and Friends, so they had a relationship with the network. It was pitched to PBS with a 7-minute teaser tape, and PBS loved it. So much so that instead of just agreeing to a pilot episode, they agreed to a full 40 episodes. This was a pretty big deal, and the Wishbone team was not expecting it. So after the agreement, the team had to go into a scramble to get everything done on time. Led by creator Rick Duffield and writer Stephanie Simpson, they began working on the show with their crew. As mentioned, the outline of the show was for the dog to be named Wishbone, and the audience would be able to hear his thoughts. Wishbone would live with his young owner, a boy named Joe, and Joe's mother Ellen at their house. There would be other characters as well, and there would typically be a plot or dilemma involving Joe or his mother, and Wishbone would then find some literature that related to the situation and imagine himself in it. There would then be scenes of Wishbone starring as the lead character in the story. Lyric Corporation, who owned the Lions Group, then created a new production company called Big Feats Entertainment for the show. The show was made in the Dallas, Texas area where Lyric Corporation was from. To find the star of the show Wishbone, they held a 3-day casting call and auditioned over 100 dogs, and famously, the very last dog they saw was a Jack Russell Terrier named Soccer, and he ended up winning the job. This was because of his expressive face and his ability to do a backflip. He had also already starred in TV commercials for brands such as Nike, so he had some acting experience. For the rest of the cast, many local actors were found as well. Larry Brantley, a stand-up comedian, was chosen to be the voice of Wishbone after an audition. Wishbone's owner in the show, the boy named Joe, would be played by Jordan Wall, and Mary Chris Wall was chosen to be Joe's mother, although she was not his mom in real life. The production was very fast, and filming began on August 1st, 1994. They followed a strict filming schedule of 5 days per episode, with the first 2 days being the real-world filming and the last 3 the fantasy scenes. An overnight crew worked on the set so that they were always ready to go. Wishbone was trained by Jackie Martin Captain, who was his owner and trainer. Overall, the production was extremely difficult with the time crunch and all the different scenes that they had to do. Plus, finding clothes that fit the dog right was tough. But against all odds, they got it done, and filming ended in July of 1995. Wishbone would be a daily show on PBS, which is why they needed the 40 episodes for the first season. And in the fall of 1995, there was a lot of advertising for the new show Wishbone, and it would air on all PBS stations. And on Sunday, October 8, 1995, the show debuted on PBS for a 1-hour special, and then would air on weekday afternoons. When the show first came out, it received immediate success. Viewers loved the stories, as well as Wishbone himself. To talk more about the characters, Wishbone was a highly intelligent dog, who although could not talk with humans in the show, the viewers of the show could hear his thoughts. And he was the only character that was in the both real-life scenes and his fantasy world scenes on the show. Joe Talbot is Wishbone's 11-year-old owner, who is a boy in middle school that loves basketball. His mother Ellen is a librarian and is very wise and caring. Their next-door neighbor Wanda is always coming over, and she loves her flowers and is president of the Historical Society. Then there are Joe's best friends, Samantha Kepler and David Barnes. Samantha is adventurous, outgoing, and a bit of a tomboy. David is very tech-savvy and loves science and math. Then there's Demont Jones, who's the local neighborhood bully. The show takes place in the fictional town of Oakdale, Texas. In most cases, there would be a real-world story that takes place around Joe. Wishbone will observe this, and then it will remind him of a piece of literature that he will then read, and then he will become part of the story as the main character. The episode will cut back and forth between the two stories of fantasy and reality, and in the end of the episodes, they would show a couple minutes of behind-the-scenes footage. That first season of 40 episodes was very successful on PBS with audiences. The show won awards as well as had lots of praise from educators. New episodes aired until December of 1996, and then reruns aired pretty much daily. After the success of the show, PBS wanted to order more episodes. The only problem was that the show was incredibly expensive to make. Each episode costed between $500,000 and $1 million. This was because of all the different sets that they had to go through for the historical fantasy scenes. Plus they had to get tons of costumes for those scenes, not just for humans, but for the dog as well. And then there was a separate set of theater actors for the fantasy scenes. Ultimately, it was an extremely expensive show for Lyric Studios to make. And PBS was only legally allowed to pay them so much money because it was public television, so Lyric made a compromise with PBS that they would make a second season, but they could not afford to do another 40 episodes. Instead, they just did 10. Lyric was losing tons of money on the show despite it being successful, and they were using money made from Barney to keep it afloat. They were willing to take the hit initially in hopes that Wishbone would be a big seller for merchandise and home video because of its popularity. This could help them end up with a profit. The production of Season 2 started in late 1996, and it was a lot different than Season 1. Because of the budget deficit, they had to cut corners and save money any way they could. But by the end of production, they had completely run out of money. They decided to make a TV movie at the end as a final strategy to maybe get on a cable network. But it was announced to the cast and crew that when the TV movie was done being produced, the series would be finished altogether. They had no money left to do anything. In mid-1997, they finished filming, and immediately after, all the sets were destroyed. Season 2 aired on PBS in the fall of 1997, and because they were only 10 episodes, new episodes were on weekly instead of daily, but reruns of Season 1 continued to air. Then, in early 1998, the movie aired on PBS. The show was still a big hit with audiences and won several more awards. Unfortunately, it would not be able to produce more episodes. Merchandise and home videos were made for the show, but the merchandise didn't sell very well because the show had a target audience of older children around the ages of 6 to 12, and merchandise for those ages didn't sell as well as Barney merchandise for younger children. The videos didn't sell good either because there would be just one episode per tape. Lyric Studios tried to get the show on cable television, which would have a much higher money opportunity, and the networks were interested, but unfortunately the show had a 5-year contract with PBS. The contract would end in 2001, but prior to that, Lyric Studios were sold to the British media giant Hit Entertainment for $275 million. Reruns of Wishbone would continue to air on PBS until the contract expired in 2001. There were a total of 2 seasons and 50 episodes. Many viewers never knew that there weren't any more episodes being made. It was just reruns for years, and there wasn't some big announcement that the show was cancelled or anything. But when viewers did realize that there were no more new episodes, they were very disappointed. After 2001, the show seemed to sort of disappear. It briefly returned to PBS Kids Go in 2007 and some stations in 2013. But after that, the show hasn't been seen much. Today, Wishbone is remembered as a great program by those who saw it when they were kids. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.